So, Sony came out and announced the PlayStation Classic. This is going to be in the same vein as the NES and Super Nintendo Classic systems.
Throbby vein.
Same throbby vein. Pulsing. Pretty sure I can see 1 or 5 of them in your forehead right now.
Oh, yes. I'm sweating. I should. It's cool out.
It's fine. I'm hot all day, every day.
Okay.
So, Sony's getting in on that fucking action.
They're getting in.
They're getting in. They're so hard in on that action.
$100, Ian, for the PlayStation Classic.
$100 goddamn dollars, though.
2 controllers.
2 controllers, non-analog. They're not analog controllers. They're just regular.
They're waiting. I saw a funny tweet from the guy who used to run the Kirzoali. What was this guy's The guy who used to do the PlayStation, the Sony parody account. I'm stressed right now. I can't think of it. But he basically said they're going to wait until Nintendo comes out with the N64 Classic to have the analogs and copy it like they did back 20 years ago.
Yes.
It was a funny tweet. I'm not doing justice to it. But the same guy who did that false account did it. Go on, Ian.
Right. So, it's going to have 2 controllers in the box with no analogs. It's going to be a little tiny baby PlayStation. It's going to be cute. It's going to look like the gray one. It's 45% smaller. Or 45% of the size. Whatever it is, it's adorable. It's going to be USB powered. It's not going to have the little power nugget.
It doesn't come with the plug. It comes with the cable, not the plug.
Yeah, it doesn't come with the charge
nugget.
nugget.
They couldn't have 25-cent cost to throw in the little nub.
Yeah.
No. Nintendo did that. Nintendo branded their own one and did that.
Did they?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, they did. Yeah.
Come on, Sony. What's going on? What's going on, baby?
You're right.
What's going on?
Bonnie and I have been playing the Super Nintendo Classic like crazy lately.
It's a good machine.
It is.
It's quality.
Yeah.
So it's $100, 20 games, Ian.
20.
They've only announced 5, right? 5 or 6?
Yeah, Jumping Flash, which is yay. Final Fantasy VII, sure.
Yay. For people.
Yeah.
A Tekken?
Tekken 3. That's good.
That's a good one. If you're going to do 2 or 3, sure. A racing game. Which racing?
Ridge Racer Type 4, which is fucking fantastic.
Okay. And Wild Arms.
Okay. And possibly something else. But, I mean, that's all good to start. That's great. That's fantastic.
Why don't you tell us all the 20 games?
Yeah.
That's kind of weird.
It is. It's strange. So, my first issue, I guess, is the price point. 100's a tough sell for me.
We've jumped with only two consoles from 60 to 80 to 100 pretty damn quickly, haven't we?
Yes. So
in 2 years, we've jumped up.
I don't know that 100 would bother me if we had analog. Now, I know for a lot of people the analog doesn't matter, but and most of these games don't require analog. As a matter of fact, the only game that requires analog on the Sony PlayStation 1 is Ape Escape, which has not been announced for it, of course, obviously, and will not be announced for it. Which is a bummer, though, because it's a defining game on the system.
Kaz Hirai, that was the guy's name, chairperson of Sony, sorry.
Oh. So, that's a shame that game's already rolled out.
Is Ridge Racer a better experience with an analog, though, or is it still a digital?
No, I play that. I always played that.
It wasn't analog at all.
It was, but I always played it digital.
Okay.
Digital
so you are losing out a little bit from that. A racing game, you do want to have analog.
No, not necessarily with Ridge Racer.
Okay.
I think it's arguable. But games such as, like, for instance, if Metal Gear is announced, and Konami has been pretty happy with working with these plug-and-plays, that's one that certainly benefited from analog sticks. There are games that benefit from analog sticks on the PlayStation for sure. Then I would be closer to that. I'd be closer to happy with that price point. When we discussed the possibility of an N64 Mini or Classic, we talked about how it would probably have to be closer to 100 because of
possibly because of the 2 controllers. Those are sturdy controllers with analogs.
Right. And I felt like that's probably okay. But when you look at the fact that this doesn't have analog and you look at it starts to feel like a slightly less accessible package. The reason those Nintendo ones sell so well, and even the shittier Act Games ones, is because you don't have to think quite as hard about throwing $60 at something as you do 100 or even 80. When you look at the fact that the Super Nintendo Classic came with the 2 controllers with much nicer cords as well.
And an actual USB wall plug.
Yeah. Right. It doesn't seem like a cheap. It doesn't seem like the package is cheaping out. At $100, this one seems like it's cheaping out.
Yeah, because it's only 20 games still.
Right. So that's if you don't count the hardware at all, that's them valuing every single one of those
value
games at $5.
If you want to go that route. But I think the hype beast machine would have been. They would have been at the time. It would have been to their benefit to say, here's all the games we have coming out for this, because
yes,
now if it comes too much, when is it supposed to come out? December, right?
December 3rd.
So for Christmas season gift, the hype machine would have happened now if they said, oh my God, you get Metal, like if there's no Metal Gear Solid on this, there's gonna be a ton of people say, I don't want this. I think you have to have Metal Gear Solid on this.
Well,
I
think Metal Gear Solid would be a big one. I also think landing at least Resident Evil 1.
Or one of them, 1, 2.
Well, with 2 having the remake coming out this Christmas, I think having at least part 1 would be huge.
So you need, okay, do you want to go through that now? What are some of the essentials you need to have on here? You have a Final Fantasy VII, you have to have it. It's like the biggest game that came out on the console. You have to have that. You have to have a Metal Gear Solid. You have a Ridge Racer. You have a Tekken.
I think Symphony of the Night would be a pretty good shoe-in for the system.
But maybe that's why the pricing goes up, because now we have Konami saying, well, we can kind of charge you almost whatever we want for you to get Metal Gear Solid, because everyone wants it. You know, it's kind of different than the NES Classic, where most of the most coveted games were first-party games. You know?
Yeah, but on the Super Nintendo Mini, I mean, some of the best games on there are Super Castlevania and Contra. So, and those are 2 Konami ones as well. Konami will license.
The license to me and you right now.
Yeah.
For $1.50. So you're saying that shouldn't be part of it? Part of the cost.
I don't think that's going to necessarily be part of the cost. Also, you shouldn't have to pay a premium price for when you're buying them in a bundle. Even Nintendo understood that. I mean, Nintendo loves to charge, try to charge like $50 or $5 per ROM, for NES stuff. But when the NES Classic came out, that was them doing $2 per game, essentially, and that was them realizing that they needed to stop valuing those things so high.
Okay, so we both agree that you definitely need a Metal Gear Solid.
I feel like Metal Gear Solid is a pretty big.
Let's go through some of the ones. We'll run down sort of like the best games, and you're a bigger PlayStation guy than me, but we'll go through these to see if these are ones that you would consider essentials.
I feel like a Fallout or a Wipeout is essential. A Wipeout XL maybe.
Do you think you need a Mega Man X on there?
With the collection having just come out, I don't know. I feel like that's an easy one to get from Capcom though, so you could probably do a Mega Man X4.
How about a Spyro? Spyro.
I feel like a Spyro and a Crash would be almost shoo-ins.
Both of them,
except for I don't know what's going on with the recreations, but yes, I feel like a Crash and a Spyro would almost have to be on there.
If you didn't have Ridge Racer, I'd say put Driver on there. That's an iconic game at the time. Let's see what else is on here. How about a Tenchu game? That was sort of like a pretty big title when it came out.
Tenchu, sure, but I don't think From Software has done any sort of licensing. Those are the
I'm
people who do Dark Souls and Armored Core. But see, Tenchu and Armored Core were both like huge entry.
Tenchu was huge when it first came out. How about Klonoa?
Anything Namco did is possible, and Klonoa was a big one.
Okay, so we're trying to get to 20 like essentials, like not just I like Suikoden. Suikoden probably won't make it.
Jet Moto, I imagine we'll see on there.
You think so?
Yeah.
Or is that sort of like a too early thing?
I think we'll probably see some of those.
How about a Tomb Raider?
Yeah, maybe a Tomb Raider, a Jet Moto, Cool Borders,
Oddworld,
a Twisted Metal.
Twisted Metal for sure. I think you have to have a Twisted Metal.
I think a Twisted Metal 2.
I would say borderline Oddworld. Oddworld was huge.
Yep. Parappa.
Legacy of Kain.
Possibly a Legacy of Kain. I definitely think a Parappa the Rapper.
I think you have to do the first one.
Yeah, I think
that was iconic. I'm thinking of like iconic PlayStation games, especially if you're going by the mode of pre-analog. You're talking about like the first 3 years of games, like early or first 2 years before the analog came out, something like that.
Parappa. I think the licensing would be difficult on this, but Tony Hawk's Pro Skater on PlayStation 1.
All the music licensing, though.
Yeah, that would be horribly difficult.
You have Ridge Racer instead of Gran Turismo. I would say Gran Turismo.
Well, you put a great. I mean, you
probably can't waste space
games,
on 2. Yeah,
yeah, but
you can't do 2 racing games like that.
That would be.
But I wouldn't be shocked they put a Gran Turismo on there. I wouldn't be.
No, I wouldn't either.
Parappa, I think, is almost a shoo-in. Silent Hill, or Resident Evil. You got to pick one or the other, probably.
They could do one. I mean,
would say you got to pick one or the other.
Konami Konami and Capcom have both been pretty easy to work with, at least when you look at Nintendo and Nintendo's plug and plays, they've both been easy. But I feel like one or the other we would get a Silent Hill or a Resident Evil. I feel like that's a shoo-in.
I think you're going to get a Resident Evil for sure. You're going to get a Twisted Metal. I think borderline Gran Turismo, because that was huge, that game. I mean, not so much as anymore, but when that came out, it was like, holy shit, this is the best racing simulation we've ever seen.
Maybe we'll get a Warhawk thrown in there just for the fuck of it, because it was a Sony first-party release.
It's like launch. Just throw it on there.
Yeah, I'd love to see an Extreme Games. No one likes that game, but that
which one?
Extreme Games.
I don't remember that.
It was a launch
for
title.
my vast PlayStation. If they could get the licensing, like that original Spider-Man game was a big seller when that came out back in the day.
Sure, I doubt it though.
Yeah, they won't get it. Probably. Oh, then again, maybe. The PS4 one came out and is huge.
Anyway, after going through all that, so there's the PlayStation Classic. But the one thing I wanted to really talk about was, so beyond the game list, the mature thing, a lot of people at first weren't certain if they would, but apparent they would go mature. However, I believe the European PEGI rating was already at 18 or 16, which means that...
Well, if you're doing a Resident Evil, I have to, right?
Well, they didn't announce anything yet. I'm just saying that initially people were afraid that they'd be limiting themselves by trying to go for, teen only. But it does look like apparently in Europe that it has been granted their equivalent of a mature rating.
So maybe they revealed the list to them.
Well, it's just been rated. And then what would really interest me here is apparently there is what looks to be perhaps a port underneath something in the back of it. People are wondering if that might be a way to load PlayStation 1 classics that people have already purchased onto it. And if that's the case through the PSN network...
How would you connect it, you think?
Just a cable.
Just a cable?
Yeah. That would be huge because there's no good way to play your PlayStation 1 classics on a PS4. You can't do it. So if you have those purchased and they're still part of your PSN network, but you need a Vita or a PS3 to play those.
So basically using the emulator.
If you could, that would be pretty neat. Because nothing's been mentioned about that.
Because they're not going to put. People are like, oh, we can be a PlayStation emulation machine. It's like, well, let's pump the brakes there. These games are not small. These are CD sized games. That's 700 megs each. These are not going to be huge gigabyte hard drives, like 50 gigabyte hard drives they're throwing on. They're probably using flash memory of, we'll just say, they're putting in 32 gigabyte cards into here and whatever, hot gluing them in or what have you. So you're not going to be able to add the whole PlayStation library onto here.
Let's relax. Yeah.
Unless someone finds a way to hack to add a USB thumb drive onto it, and then you got to go through that. Then it's not an all-in-one, but then you got to find all these ISOs. It's not the same thing as saying, oh, let's load up all the Super Nintendo games or any. It's just not the same. So, but the fact that it's an emulator, which is still exciting though. That, like you said, that potential. I didn't think about that.
Yeah.
Hook it up to your machine, so it's like a cute little interface that you can do. That would be special.
That would be nice, especially because, like I said,
would you be happy with the $100 price then if you could have a backwards way of playing the games?
It depends.
Loading the games on your PS4 disc, you're saying, and then it accesses the...
Yeah, I mean, I'd have to see. Like I said, that would maybe make me more interested.
That would be interesting. Especially, that'd be... Well, I'm guessing then the vast majority of those games wouldn't be available on the current PS4 store, or won't be. They won't care about losing those sales.
Right.
I don't know. That's an interesting take, Ian. That's why I got you on the podcast. It's an interesting take there. I tweeted out and about the marketing message being so similar to the NES Classic, and it's not just because it's called PS Classic or PlayStation. That's not it. The fact that the same image, like with a white background, holding it in the hand, I understand there's only so many ways you can come across that this is a mini, but we're talking. It's almost like the same hand model they used.
I feel like it is.
The beats of the video were the same. Again, I don't know how many ways you can market a mini console, but I'm just shocked that it was that close.
There's got to be a few different ways you can do it that aren't.
So much so that Twitter picked my tweet as a part of their PlayStation Classic moment. They picked a couple of my tweets, and that was one of them. That was my serious one. Then my other one was talking about the eventual video game crash of 2019 when we have 50 different classic consoles. We'll get to that in a bit, though, later on, because I think that's coming more sooner than we're going to realize with all these classics.
Yeah,
it is. We already had the Genesis one announced, pre-announced, even before this. An official Genesis Classic, not the At Games bundle of the week that they put out. So I am borderline interested in this, just because I wasn't a big PlayStation person. I go over and watch my friend play Final Fantasy VII, or we play Tekken 2. Tekken 2 was a great party game back in the late '90s. I didn't have Bleem, so I had Bleem just for like Driver and Tekken 3 and maybe one other game I bought back and then just to play on my computer. So I wasn't totally outside of and Fire Pro G. I did get that going on. Was that on Bleem? Yeah, I played that on Bleem. I still had Bleem when Fire Pro G came out. What, 2002?
No, G was
or 99. Was that early? 2000?
G was 98 or 99.
Was that early? Okay.
Yeah.
I did have it on Bleem.
I was definitely still in high school.
But anyway, so that's interesting. If it's compatible with the PlayStation 4, that would be an interesting sort of kick in the balls. And Nintendo would never, I don't think, do that, especially now they have our online service that we'll get to. But okay, that's it. I think I ran down the list. I think we're probably right with like 80% of the ones we spoke about to get to 20.
Yeah,
and I think people will be satisfied with that at that point. What about how about we didn't talk about like something like Chrono Cross? Ooh, would that make it? You think? Or
possible. No? I mean,
or having two Square RPGs, would that make sense?
I think there'll be a couple RPGs. I mean, the SNES Classic had 21 games.
If you count Star Fox 2, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there was like 4 RPGs on there, so
that's true.
I imagine we'll see.
I think the big one will be if there's not a Tony Hawk on that, that's like the bases loaded of the system, right? That's sold a ton, and I think people will be disappointed if that's not on in some capacity,
right?
But then again, maybe those people have sort of moved on. It's sort of a different crowd. Maybe of people that played that versus some of the other games. I don't know.
Yeah,
it's hard to say. I don't know. We're in Southern California. You tell me what people are still interested in getting Tony Hawk. The original 1 or 2. On the system.
They are. I mean, they're surprisingly harder to come by.
Those people actually will play those and like
yeah.
them. They're playing on the original rubber frickin' minis. All right, maybe they'll come out with the analog one later. So all right, there you go. Enjoy your $100 PlayStation Classic. I just think it's weird they haven't announced more titles by now. It's kind of weird.